GMOs affect people's lives. Today we are talking about structural adjustment. Welcome to Chrysalis Chats. My name is Tanya, and this is where we talk about topics I feel are important to our collective awakening as a society. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Now, GMOs are actually a social justice issue if you're going to think about it critically. And I'm going to start with some history. So get ready. Buckle in. Okay, we're going to go on this cruise together like the Frizzle. Okay? So structural adjustment, what the hell is that? We're going to get there in a second, okay? But it is actually a modern form of colonialism. This is a big topic in post-colonial theory. If you want to read books on this, there are all sorts of intelligent people writing all sorts of relevant information about this, okay? So back in the 1980s, we were transitioning as a society into a whole new era of economics, right? And this is known as neoliberalism, all right? But where we really need to start before we get into all that is in the 1940s, there was this meeting at Bretton Woods, right, in New Hampshire in the United States. And it was during this era where we're coming out of this intense economic collapse as a global society, right? And we're trying to solve the problem. We're trying to figure out how the hell do we solve the economic crisis issue, okay? So at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire in the United States, we had all these different global leaders coming together to think about this. And a few things came out of this. We actually agreed unanimously to some extent. We did agree, let's say, that our money would be backed up by gold. Each country's money would be backed up by gold. That's where that whole notion comes from. But it actually has since been changed in the 1970s, I believe. So that is no longer what's happening. And we can attribute all sorts of different issues such as economic inflation to that, right? But outside of that, what came out of this meeting at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, was the development of two national organizations, and that's where we're going to focus in on. That is the World Bank, and that is the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the IMF, okay? So we have these two global organizations that are created at this meeting of these governmental figures, right? And the United States, by the way, this is important, getting into post-colonial theory or modern-day colonialism, the United States, Britain, these more developed nations are actually holding a larger percentage of ownership in these organizations that are national organizations. So if you want to think, you want to look at how does colonialism happen in a modern sense, this is the history part of it, right? About how the modern colonialism is being played out at a global scale. So anyway, how does this connect though? What am I talking about? We know the World Bank and the IMF. What does this mean? These organizations were founded under the guise, and they're still perpetuating this message of solving poverty, of alleviating global poverty, okay? But there is a deep unjust irony to this statement, because a country will come to the World Bank and the IMF, they will say, hey, we are broke. Example, India. This is a prime case study, India, okay? India comes to the World Bank and the IMF to say, hey, you know, this whole world is changing. We are developing in a different way that we have never developed before. We are not able to compete in this market as it has been structured. We need some help. We don't have money. Our people are struggling. We need some help. Okay, so they go to the World Bank, they go to the IMF, and these institutions, what they do is they place the country under what's called structural adjustment, okay? And in structural adjustment, what happens is the government body that has come for this service, it's actually a loan. What they get is a massive loan so that they can stimulate their economy. That's the thought process, right? So they come and they get this loan, but under structural adjustment, what happens is the World Bank and the IMF, they actually place these countries under their own form of governmental system. And so what happens is the state or the country, right, they surrender their rights, for the most part, to these institutions, which again are largely owned by the United States, okay, which is the most developed nation in the world, right? And so what happens is their barriers to trade are brought way down, because the logic is, in order to repay this loan, I'm going to need to increase my exports. If I'm India, I'm selling more than ever so that I can pay back the World Bank, okay, from this loan that I just took out to get my country built up. So when barriers to trade are brought down, what happens is that country is exploited. that country is exploited. They have no right to say no to anything. Regulations that were previously in place fly out the window. We're talking about anything from environmental regulations to social justice regulations in terms of how people are treated in factories, whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? Regulations are thrown out the window. So if we had a sanction or whatever that said, like, this tree is sacred, we don't have many forests, you know, we're going to save this, we're not going to cut this down. The structural adjustment process comes in, and the United States government, through this entity that is the World Bank, that is the IMF, so it's not the government, it's the World Bank and the IMF. There's this distancing here of accountability, right? But if we understand how this was formed and how the modern day ownership percentages play out, this is a colonialism issue, okay? So anyway, point being, what happens is that government entity says, India, nah, forget about that. Those regulations, out the window. We don't care about all that. What we care about is money, because you need to pay us back. That's what it comes down to. So we see this destruction of the landscape happening. Another interesting thing, and why did I put this video in the GMO theme? I put this video in the GMO theme because under this process of structural adjustment, what we also see is companies that have created GMOs, such as companies in the United States, like Monsanto, they have to grow that food in India that is being produced by these US-based companies. And real talk, guys, gals, people, this video might get taken down one day, and I want you to understand why. And if you watch this video, you will understand why, okay? But the reality that I'm preaching to you right now is just that reality, okay? So check it out. These countries such as India, they have to grow under the structural adjustment process US-based companies' food sources, specifically genetically modified organisms like corn. So we got India, who has been a subsistence-based culture living off the land for all these years, right? Now they're growing corn that was produced in a lab in the United States of America. And what's happening is that corn is having to be purchased by farmers. Farmers have to purchase seed. Anybody who has ever grown anything understands that in nature, the world, it produces seed for free. You don't pay for seed. That's ridiculous unless you're just starting off. If you're just starting a garden and you haven't grown the best damn tomato you've ever grown in your life before to save the seed from it, yeah, you're going to pay for tomato seed. Or maybe you're an at-home gardener. Yeah, man, buy your seed. That's cool. Support local seed companies. But if you're a farmer, understand that farmers typically save their seeds. This has been a cultural reality for people for thousands of years, okay? So the injustice that comes in, number one, is that farmers in this new system of structural adjustment have to purchase their seed, which means there's an economic input from that farmer continuously every single year. Now, what happens if their whole land is hit by a massive storm, that whole corn crop out the window, gone? What happens? What happens? And then the only way to make that money back is to grow more seed. Well, what do you need to do if you're the farmer? You need to pay more to that company to get more seed to grow it again. And what happens here is another cycle of debt. Okay, and what this whole system of structural adjustment is doing, it starts global, it lands local, right, is it's actually creating these perpetual cycles of poverty. And it's keeping these nations, these third world nations, in a perpetual state of development. Okay, Peru, Bolivia, Mexico, we see examples all over the world of how people are being abused through a governmental system of structural adjustment. Okay, and that is what I want you to understand about structural adjustment. This has caused a huge issue in places like India. You can research it for yourself. A while back there was in the news a bunch of stories of farmers who have previously lived off the land, you know, for all these years, and they feel so defeated by this new system because, you know, the land is responding. If you look back at the previous videos this week, the land is responding to an industrial farming method. The land is responding to a monoculture. The land is not as fertile. So what happens is there's the need for more inputs. This is the chemicalization of organic agriculture, right? This is the green revolution that happened in the 1950s, the industrialization of our food system as a globe, right? As a global community, okay? But what happens is that farmer gets in this perpetual state of debt because they need to keep purchasing. Oh, my plants aren't growing. I need to purchase a fertilizer. Oh, my plants aren't growing, or there's a pest. I need to purchase a pesticide, okay, to kill this. So this is what is happening, and farmers are actually killing themselves. That's the point, y'all. Farmers have been killing themselves over this because they're getting in these cycles of debt where they're no longer able to produce the abundance that is natural to the planet because they are in debt. Okay, and it's because of this system of structural adjustment that has imposed these unjust regulations on the people. Okay, so that has been my summary of structural adjustments in a little under 11 minutes. I really appreciate you being here. I want to give you just a shout out, right? Respect for listening to this, because this is a global, local issue when you think about what you put on your plate. You have power. You have power over all that, okay? To whatever extent you are aware of it now after watching this, and you can go and learn more about this. There are so many people talking about it, okay? I really appreciate you. Thanks for being a part of this collective transformation. You are a beautiful butterfly in process. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the like button. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I would love to just get the conversation going a little more. And you have a beautiful rest of your day.